So the book I decided to do a review on is Mummies of the Pharaohs, Exploring the Valley of the Kings, and the authors are Melvin Berger and Gilda Berger, husband and wife. They are from New York. Let's see. I made my selection just by looking up informational books for our specific age that we had to choose from, and I've liked mummies. They seem interesting to me, so I decided to learn more about them. The book begins with an introduction into what it's going to be about, and then after the introduction it is broken up into 3 different parts: 2 Englishmen and a Pharaoh, Grave Mysteries, the Great Tomb of Seti I, one of the Pharaohs of Egypt in the New Kingdom, and I believe the last Pharaoh in the New Kingdom. To me, this book is a descriptive nonfiction book because throughout the book it gives lots of descriptions about what is going on, what are they looking for, the tomb diggers, the Egyptianologists, specialists of Egyptian history. And then there are very good pictures of the tombs they find, as well as some of the things they find within the tombs. The first section is about 2 Englishmen and a Pharaoh. Their names are Howard Carter and Lord Cavanagh. They're on the hunt to look for King Tut's tomb because it was never to be found. And it took them 5 years before they found it, and they found it only by mistake. That's one of my 7 interesting facts that I learned, that it was just, they stumbled upon it because they were about to give up hope. Another interesting fact that I liked was some of the stuff they found in King Tut's tomb. These are sandals that he wore, and there's pictures of his enemies on the bottom of them, and he thought so every time he walked he was stepping on his enemies. And this is a diagram of his several rooms within his burial site. And here is a picture of, they are called sarcophaguses, and there is actually 3 of them within one. Here's the picture that most of us probably know of King Tut. He died at the age of 18, and from later on x-rays and more investigation, they believe that he was killed. This is a neck piece that King Tut would wear, and an earring. Looks really heavy. Here is a diagram of the Valley of the Kings. The tombs that they have found, they numbered them. I believe they have found over 62 tombs. Another thing I found really interesting is that there was actually a woman as a pharaoh at one point because her stepson was too young to rule at the time. He was only 10 years old, so officials asked her to step in and help. But when he came of age, she refused to step down, and that caused a lot of tension between the two. And so when she finally passed away, the new pharaoh, which was her stepson, came into play, and this is a statue of her, and he went through the whole city and destroyed everything that was of her, reminded him of her. This is a really cool painting. It's a pharaoh and then townspeople or villagers, however you want to call them, would come and bring him offerings, animals, skins, swords, gold rings, anything they could think of they brought to him. This is the front of a temple that the Pharaoh Ramses II had built, and these are all statues of him. They are 67 feet high, and here is a close-up of a picture of the head, and they say that the mouth itself is 3 feet wide, which is pretty crazy. In a sense, I guess it's kind of like Mount Rushmore that we have here in America. Section of the book is the Great Tomb of the Pharaoh Seti, spelled S-E-T-I, and his tomb he started creating many years before he passed away. It took 120 laborers to build this magnificent gravesite in the Valley of the Kings, and I believe he was the last pharaoh to be buried there. It took them, let's see, where did it say? It took them 6 years to finish it, from starting digging it to plastering the walls to painting to adding all the details, taking in all his belongings. And he only ruled for 5 years after his tomb was finished. And as soon as a pharaoh died, they began the embodiment process of taking out his organs. These are actually the jars that the organs were put into. Let's see. His stomach went into this one, which has a jackal head on it. The lungs went into the baboon one. The intestines went into the eagle one, and then liver went into the jar with a person's head on it. And their burial ceremony took about 70 days because they prayed and they had big processions of taking him, from having him embodied, and then restuffing him, wrapping him, putting salt on him, drying him out, everything like that, and then mummifying him. And then they also put statues like this in his grave along with all his other valuable belongings. These were believed to be statues of like servants and workers that they would take with them to the afterlife. At the beginning of the book, there's a table of contents of what's going to be in the book, as well as at the end there is an index and a bibliography that states where they got information from, the pictures, any articles they used to help. I believe this text taught me a lot more about mummies than I knew previous to reading it, even if it is for a young reader, ages 8 to 12. I would recommend it for a younger group of kids because it is an easier read and more understanding. There's great pictures and bold text that describe what the pictures are about. And I enjoyed reading this. Thanks.